This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Mother's Day is almost here, and you can get her the most beautiful time-tested gift around. A watch she can wear every day from Movement. Whether mom's into classic dress watches, rare and refined ceramics, or tried-and-true bestsellers, Movement has something she'll love. And right now, you can save big on the best Mother's Day gift ever with up to 50% off site-wide during Movement's Mother's Day sale at MVMT.com. Again, that's up to 50% off at MVMT.com.
Hi, this is Brian Husky. I play Reggie in the X-Files Season 11, and you are listening to Xcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Xcast. As ever, the truth is in here. I'm your host today, Carl Sweeney, and I'm joined by Darren Morgan superfan, Paige Schechter. Hi, Paige.
Hi, Swains.
Good to talk to you, Paige. And the reason we're here, of course, is we're going to go through the mailbag. We're going to take a look at the listener feedback for Darren Morgan's The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat, the 4th episode of Season 11. Before we get into the feedback, though, Paige, what do you say on this one? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I say thumbs up, but, I'm a Darren Morgan superfan, so I guess I have to say it.
So, general thoughts then before we get into the feedback page. So, you obviously liked it a lot, but, what would you say about it?
Well, just to review a little bit, Darren Morgan's my favorite television writer because he speaks with a really unique voice, and there's not a word wasted in his scripts. And there's a lot of thought and precision to what he does. So he knows the characters well enough that he can push them as far as he can and still make it feel real, even when it's totally out there. So the way he sees the world always makes me stop and think, well, yeah, why didn't I think of that?
All right. Well, this may surprise you, it may not, but the feedback we've received is a little split, Paige. So it's going to be an interesting one to go through.
Yes.
And we'll start with the comments that came in on our Facebook page. I'll read 2 to start with that kind of sum up the contrasting reactions here. So Jess Thompson, first of all, says, "This is not a fave, not even close. I don't know if it is that I'm not really big on comedy, but I was a bit bored." On the other hand, Matt Conrad says, "Brilliant. Darren Morgan delivered like only he can. Hilarious and touching. A real tribute and commentary to the fans and the long, complex, loving relationship we have with the show. The story was also a potent commentary of the times we live in, showing that the show is just as, if not more relevant than it ever was. But alas, all good things must come to an end, and like Scully, we want to remember how it all was. Here's X-Files saying, so long, and thanks for all the fish." I mean, he makes some good points there about the final scene and so on, but just on this issue of the differing reactions page, can you understand why this episode is polarized people, and why do you think that might be?
You know what? I think we're at this point where every single episode is polarizing, and there's just, I call it the found art of nitpicking minutia, because that seems to be what's going on,
Do you see that as a new thing, or do you see that as something that's always been the case with the series?
Well, back in the day, we had message boards and we had groups, and it was a little bit differently. I mean, we waited longer than when the credits aired to start ranking where it fit in, and, there seems to be this need for shipping moments now, and if it doesn't have shipping moments, then it's not good. How did these people ever survive half a season with no shipping moments? Because that's the way it used to be, but now every single thing, every single little item is torn down and reconstructed the way the fan sees it, which is, it's the nature of where we are right now. But I think it also takes away a little bit from it. I mean, let it breathe a little and then come back and revisit it, maybe after you've seen it a few times like we used to do in the old days.
Yeah, I see your point, and that's kind of like my experience, where the other night I recorded with Tony, but I'd only just watched the episode 20 minutes earlier, so it's very hard to give an immediate, thoughtful reaction, and especially with something like this that's so dense and there's so much going on. It does need time to breathe, doesn't it? You do need a bit of time to process it.
Absolutely.
And also to rewatch it as well, which is what I've done a couple of times since, So let's crack on. So Maura Funchian Jaeger says, Darren Morgan did an excellent job of holding up a mirror to his audience, both Files and society as a whole, from beginning to end. As always, he achieved the perfect balance of wry, slightly dark humour and light silliness. I enjoyed his homage to earlier episodes and the fans, but find it ironic that, with Scully's final lines, he seems to question the value in reviving a beloved show that may not ever again be as good as it used to be, or as our memories of it. Yeah, how did you take that final scene and that final exchange between Mulder and Scully? Because Morgan's talked in an interview I've seen about he doesn't want to spell it out for people. He wants to preserve like any ambiguity there might be. But how did you see it exactly?
I think most of the reaction was actually pretty good for that last line, and people, really taking it to heart, and it means something to them. And a lot of people have said on social media they'd kind of like the series to end there on that line. So that's a bit of a different take. I thought it was pretty pointed when he said, "You're free to explore Uranus all you want." That seemed to be a little bit fan based, about over obsessing about things and the minutia and nitpicking.
Okay, so Katie Doe says, I enjoyed it while watching and liked all the callbacks and the general theme, but afterwards it left me feeling like there wasn't much substance to it. I think the alien scene at the end was too much and it took me out of the moment. I have no desire to see Trump so blatantly referenced in the X-Files. Can't I just have 42 minutes where I can forget he exists? And she's put Trump with an asterisk instead of the letter U, just incidentally. I did like Scully's poignant line at the end, and I think all fans can take that to heart. On this issue then of the commentary about Donald Trump, what do you make of that? Because it is fair to say it's uncharacteristic of the series, isn't it, to do something like that? But clearly it was like uppermost in Morgan's mind when he sat down to write this episode. So how did you see it? What's
funny is when Weremonster aired, and we had that long scene in the graveyard, and I thought, well, this is kind of going on for a while. But then after I let the episode sit with me, now I'm really very comfortable with the graveyard scene. And so I'm wondering if down the line, this alien scene, which seems to be going on for a while and taking up so much space on the canvas, will sit better, with everybody. But because Trump is so foremost in everybody's mind, it's kind of taking over. We can't shake it because it's so obvious.
Yeah, on the issue of that graveyard scene, I'll come back to that after this next message, because I think it ties in to what Caradwen Foley says. And she says, I didn't love this episode. I thought the premise was really interesting and promising, but I thought it distantly missed an opportunity for Clyde Bruckman-style poignancy and gravity by being so relentless with the caricatures and in-jokes. I did enjoy the subtler gags, though, like Morgan taking the piss out of parking garages. Even when Scully leaves Mulder's rural Virginia house with their takeout after he tells her he can't eat until he finds a lost Martian, her car is in a parking garage. On this issue of the car park scenes, I mean, there were a lot of them, weren't there? There were 4, I think. There was Mulder's first meeting with Reggie, then there was Scully's meeting with Reggie, then there was the extended one where they both talked to him, and then there was the final one where Reggie gets taken away. So, I really like that graveyard scene you referred to in Weremonster. I thought it was a good setting, but here I thought that maybe if you'd have changed, like if you'd have taken the second car park scene with Scully and put that in a different location, maybe it just would have broke it up a bit, and maybe it would have flowed slightly better. But what do you think? You might disagree with me, though.
Well, I wasn't really bothered by it, and I know a lot of people were, because, there were scenes being intersected into it, and so would it be better if they were in the office for one scene, or if they were at Mulder's house for one scene? It really didn't bother me that much, but I see it's a big problem for a lot of the fandom.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a big problem for me, but I definitely noticed it. But maybe my reaction will be like you said with the graveyard scene in the Weremonster episode. Maybe once the episode's kind of settled down in our minds a bit, it just won't concern me. I don't know. I must have kept the cost of the episode down, though, I would guess.
Yes, I would think so.
All right, so Paige, that's what we had come to us on our Facebook page, but we got a Facebook group, of course, the X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group. And I know you've been having a look through the discussion thread there to see what people were saying.
Right.
And which messages particularly have kind of grabbed your attention from there?
Okay, well, I have a bunch of them, and some of them sort of cover the same ground, but I wanted to specifically talk about Edin Dumasik's post because there was a lot of insight in there. And it was said, to me, the episode works even better on another level, and that's the meta commentary on the truth of the show itself and of its audience. In Reggie's alternative version of events, he is the audience, the fandom of the X-Files, and Mulder and Scully are the show. Reggie has indulged in a fantasy where he claims ownership of the X-Files just because he was there from the start, from the pilot itself, when in fact the only reason he knows Mulder and Scully is because he surveyed them, as we the audience have done. He even has cute nicknames for Mulder and Scully, which they have never actually used. He inserts himself in the old cases as a commentator. Toombs is creepy, killer cats are ridiculous, and takes it a step further in the case of Small Potatoes. Reggie shoots Eddie Van Blunt, and I don't think that's just Morgan being self-deprecating. Reggie is basically the shippers in that scene. I mean, Eddie dares to try and steal a kiss from Scully. So I think Edin has a lot more on the subject, but it was the best I've read to date on the episode, and I just wanted to talk for a second about how different it is right now from the original. Chris Carter's original vision for the show was, no Romo ever. He never wanted it. And now it's so overbearing. But I love the way Darren Morgan, if this analysis bears out, I love the way he did it because it is in true Darren Morgan fashion.
It really is. And I think Edin's take there is quite persuasive, on the fandom aspect of it. I wonder if that really was Morgan's intent, but it's a fascinating look at it anyway, isn't it? Yeah, I'm kind of somebody who's... you're right. Obviously, Carter's original conception of the series has changed radically. And I don't know, I've been able to kind of straddle both camps, if that makes sense. I was always kind of a no Romo, but I'm kind of happy, kind of made my peace with the shipper stuff. And I actually quite enjoy it now. But I don't know, how do you see it?
I'm sort of in the middle as well. I guess I lean a little bit no Romo, just because I believe Mulder and Scully are soulmates, but I don't really need to see them kissing and getting it on to know that. It's just the fact. Obviously, no one else is the person for the other person.
Yeah. So what else have we had in the Facebook group then?
Okay, here's one from Michael Little, who said it was a brilliant takedown of postmodernism and Donald Trump. I can't seem to say those two words together. I can see this one being polarizing. Reminded me of Darren's Millennium episodes. That's a good thing. And I thought the same thing. I thought it was more reminiscent of millenniumistic, if you will, than his actual previous X-Files.
Yeah, I thought quite a bit of it was reminiscent of the Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense episode, Especially like the video of Dr. Vey reminded me a bit of that. And if anyone hasn't seen Morgan's 2 Millennium episodes, they're well worth checking out, even if you're not a fan of Millennium, I suppose. Although there's other stuff, even if you've never seen Millennium, it's worth doing kind of a selective watch of that, I think. Yeah, anything else, Paige, from over there?
Yep, we got some more. Marlene Stemme said, I don't care to have politics very obviously poked in my face from every angle. That's bad art. Direct references in 4 episodes in a row is a bit much for any persuasion.
I mean, I was talking to Tony about this the other night, and I think that if you take a couple of the examples from earlier episodes, you could have toned them down or removed them, but in this episode, it was obviously what Morgan was aiming at, wasn't he? So
right.
I was kind of surprised he was so forthright in the political stuff, but I was kind of very intrigued to get his take on it at the same time, But I mean, how do you feel about this issue of 4 episodes in a row of references, direct or slightly indirect, to Trump, etc.?
I think it's a very valid point. In this particular case, like you just said, it's kind of integral to the script. And so this is the one I would have chosen to want to see out of the 4.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think what I said the other night was the reference in +1 to hey, the president's trying to take down the FBI seemed a little, shoehorned in.
Right.
So maybe the other episodes could have benefited from some reworking, but this one, my instinct is it was fine. That just my slant on it, basically. And did you have one more there from Facebook page?
All right, I have two quickies. I'll do them quick. Adam Silva said, I'm sure I'll be in the minority, but I didn't think it was on the level of previous Darren Morgan episodes, and certainly not my favorite of the season so far. The second half was better than the first. Darren is a great writer, but it would have been better in the hands of a director like Kim Manners, though that can be said of everything, which we would all agree about that last part, I'm quite sure. And Andrew Brooker said, absolutely stunning episode. Reminded me of all those Morgan episodes I watched as a teenager, laughing my arse off as much at the stupidity of the episode as I was laughing at the neck-breaking juxtaposition of an episode like this in a show like The X-Files. Best episode of the season by a long shot. So those are two people expressing completely different viewpoints who saw the same episode. It might be Mandela effect, I'm not sure.
No, it's really fascinating because, but previously when we were covering My Struggle 3, and I was saying that, wow, this is one of the most divisive episodes ever, but it wasn't, in the sense that the people who were like me, who were positive about My Struggle 3, weren't claiming it to be this great episode or anything. We were saying, oh, it's pretty good, basically. And then you had people who really didn't like it. But this one is running the whole gamut, isn't it? From 10 out of 10s to people who really can't get on with it,
It is.
Really fascinating. And I'll be interested to see, in a few years, when people talk about it, where exactly will the kind of general wisdom be on it then? But who knows? Yeah, so there's lots of great stuff in our Facebook group and lots of immediate discussion of the episode, which has been good to go through. So thanks for reading those out.
Sure.
Paige. And then we had loads of people come back to us on Twitter with their thoughts on the episode, so we'll go through the tweets. And we've got a mix here of people who've podcasted with us, people who always talk to us, and also some new names, which is good. So we'll start with Chris Knowles, obviously regular guest on the podcast and co-author of the Complete X-Files book, who said, I liked it quite a bit. Reminded me of Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense, as we just said. The retro scenes were priceless. MKB 2018 says, I was laughing during the entire episode and I loved it. The alternate opening and clips from the show had me in stitches. The ending was heartfelt with a lovely message to Scully / Mulder and the fans. Also, the real X-File is how she got that box of Jell-O to make that huge Squatch mold. Yeah, that's very true.
When you make decisions for your company, you always look for the no-brainers. And if you have a lot of mailing and shipping to do, Stamps.com is the ultimate no-brainer. It streamlines your process to make your business more efficient, which makes you less busy. Mail checks, invoices, legal documents, books, and everything you need to keep your business running with Stamps.com. Seamlessly connect with every major marketplace and shopping cart if you sell online. Schedule package pickups through the dashboard and automatically see your cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers, with rates up to 89% off USPS and UPS rates. And with the Stamps.com mobile app, you can take care of mailing and shipping wherever you are, even on the go. Make the same no-brainer decision as over 1 million other business decision makers with Stamps.com. Sign up at Stamps.com with code PROGRAM for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.
What did you think of the way they adjusted and included these clips from all the episodes? Did you like that?
Oh boy, did I love that. I mean, I don't look at the trailers, the preview trailers, or I don't read the articles beforehand, so I'm spoiler free. And I was cackling like I haven't cackled since the regular run. I mean, I was really laughing hard, but I thought it was particularly hysterical that Teso dos Bichos, which is a universally reviled episode, was in there. I thought that was priceless.
Yeah, I thought so too. And interesting that Morgan's clips, I mean, we had a clip from Unusual Suspects, which is season 5, isn't it? But nothing later than that. Although apparently he wanted to include the postmodern Prometheus, but they couldn't make the clip work,
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I was wondering about which ones would they have wanted to get in there, but couldn't make work or couldn't make happen.
Yeah, he said in an interview I saw, he said it was quite an arduous task, actually, because a lot of the scenes you might want to put Reggie in, you just can't make it work because of the camera angle or whatever. Because I think the intention was to have him dancing behind Mulder and Scully in the final scene of Postmodern Prometheus. That would have been funny, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So, Clara Cook says, I loved many parts of the episode and I especially enjoyed Duchovny and Anderson's comic timing, but the bit that made me laugh out loud was the alternate credits with what sounded like a barbershop quartet singing the X-Files theme tune. I cracked up as soon as I heard it. Sarah Blair says, a true love letter to the fans. We got the utter comic madness of Jose Chung, the endearing quips and sentiment between Mulder and Scully, the throwbacks, Reggie something, it all captured the nostalgic file feels. And let's not overlook the utter perfection of Skinner's cameo.
Oh my God, that was awesome.
Yeah, no, you see a man there in Mitch Pileggi who'd been waiting like 20 plus years to get in a Darren Morgan episode and had like 6 seconds to kind of get as much into his performance as possible, and it was really funny, wasn't it?
He did get my tweet out after that was, can you get an Emmy for one line? Because I thought the delivery was brilliant, the physical body language was awesome. I thought he killed it in one line.
Yeah, I thought so too, and in a way it was good, because even though this is obviously a very unique episode, but it sort of continues the same theme that's been going on this season of that Skinner knows something that Mulder and Scully don't, even though that probably wasn't what Morgan was driving at, but hey. On Clara's point of Duchovny and Anderson's comic timing, yeah, they've both been on point this season, haven't they? But they were both, especially David, particularly good in this episode, I thought.
I agree on both counts. I thought they've both been really on this season, and he was amazing. That was a great performance. He, not holding anything back. He's going for it with everything he has. I loved it. And Jillian got to do some great moments too. When she was like washing her hands of them, I'm out. Some great moments from her too. Really, really nice work. Plus the guest star, who was phenomenal, Brian Husky.
Brian Husky, yeah. And just on the subject of Mulder, I don't think I'll ever forget that sight of like the bobble-headed Mulder watching The Twilight Zone on the couch as an 8-year-old.
No, I think we're scarred for life on that front.
All right, let's move on to Kathy G, who says, I thought it was hilarious first time through. Like every Darren Morgan episode, it's filled with subtle jokes that leave me saying, wait, what? Even funnier the next time I watched. It's also extremely touching, and I could be happy if the show left off with the final scene. Which is kind of what you said, Paige, that people have been saying. It probably will function as quite a nice jumping off point for people, that final scene, if they're not happy with what comes afterwards, won't it?
It will. I think it's still going to be taken to heart, even with the 6 remaining we have. I think people will still see this as a great way to say goodbye.
Beth says, my first thought was it was not as good as I thought it would be. Perhaps the hype was too much. But I think on the amazing storytelling and love it more. Darren really knows how to weave a tale. Love Dr. Vey and Reggie, really makes the episode. Love the old clips. Yeah, maybe just a word on Dr. Vey, because I thought that scene with him and Mulder was a really interesting one, actually. And there's so much going on in the episode that I haven't seen as many people talk about that. But, this manipulative figure, I thought was a fascinating one.
He was very millenniumistic. I mean, all of us who were watching Millennium really see a lot of that in the character and in the way that story unfolded. And, there were complaints about Darren Morgan's directing on this, but that scene with the statues was gorgeous.
Yeah, that's what I thought, actually, that, even if you could criticise some aspects of, the car park scenes, I thought were a little bit static, but that scene was brilliant. I think that scene, if you turn the sound down and just paid attention to the way it's put together, you'd enjoy it a lot on that level, and just a very obviously distinctive location as well. All right, so Kaylee says, honestly, didn't love it the first time I watched, but then I did a rewatch and that did it for me. I love the deep meanings, the throwbacks, the truths Darren was saying to us. I also love the shout-outs to the fans. Very well done. Which kind of indicates what we were saying, that maybe rewatching will move opinion around on this a bit.
There we go. That's what you need, especially with the Darren Morgan episode, which is so dense and has so much in it. There's so much content and so much, the obvious things that jump out at us like Trump. Okay. But then you're going to see more in it the more you see it. Like the whole thing with the escalator and the Segway. I mean, I could barely hear the dialogue that the alien was saying after that because I was still laughing about those two things.
Yeah. And Reynard says, my fallback episode if the last episode doesn't reach my expectations. The Dr. Vey scene with Mulder was brilliantly put, both in terms of social commentary and where the X-Files now sits in terms of its own mythology. Season 11 really has made me more at ease with the myth arc since existence. I mean, I think there are some interesting like links to the mythology here, because like this stuff about the aliens when they come and they say, hey, there's this hole in the ozone layer, we're giving you like 35 years to sort it out, or whatever it was they said. You know, it kind of fits in with like this thing in the Carter episodes about, you know, colonization's been put off because we've like neglected the planet, you know. So yeah, I wonder how much Morgan has attempted to make things tie up, you know. I think people don't really take it as a mythology episode, but there are some interesting like parallels.
Definitely.
Okay, so G says, my favourite episode since the original run. Darren is smart and funny. I laughed so much. I'm still not over this episode. And Scully refusing to eat the Jello was heartwarming and totally understandable. Ray Noel says, I'm not crazy about it. The part where Mulder is looking for the tape, the squatching, and the tantrum is cute and funny. Reggie something is something, but the rest of the plot doesn't interest me at all. Yeah, so the stuff about, you know, been out squatching, I think you said something about this at the start. You're saying, like, taking the characters, you know, as far as they can possibly go. And that seems about, like, the limit for Mulder to me. But it was very... It reminded me a little, actually, of that guy in Quagmire who goes around, you know, doing the footprints or whatever. What did you think of, like, that out squatching stuff? And, like, did you have any other, like, specific favourite Mulder moments at all?
Okay, well, regarding squatching, I thought it's an interesting way for Mulder. Mulder's kind of growing up, and he's giving himself some therapy for a problem he knows he has, you know, and so his solution is to go out squatching, and I appreciate that about him and about Darren Morgan giving that to him, because, you know, in the old days, and I'm sure this has been talked about much, he always put Mulder into the ground. I mean, he ground that guy into the ground. And here there's sort of some fun made of him, but it's not as completely at his expense as it previously was. I think he has sort of an affinity for Mulder now, and the squatching sort of showed that. Let's see. As for I'm going to be saying "wait, what" a lot, and I loved when the Dr. They video comments, which were obviously comments from the Weremonster episode, I'm guessing, about the editing. Editing could have been tighter, and just meh is going to be big with me. Meh. And Soy Bomb, I totally forgot about Soy Bomb, and I don't think it was Mandela effect. I just forgot. I plumb forgot that ever happened.
Is that he talks about Bob Dylan being hit with the soy bomb? Is that what you're talking about?
Right. The guy who ran on stage with soy bomb on his chest during the Grammy performance.
Yeah, I remember that. But that definitely happened.
Definitely happened, but I had completely forgot about it. So I kind of appreciated that being brought back in. But I'll never get over Reggie being cut into those scenes because I was just laughing.
As regards what you said about Morgan's portrayal of Mulder, I agree. I think he's much more sympathetic to Mulder these days than he was, you know, and possibly because Mulder looks kind of benign now compared to, you know, the conspiracy theorists that are around these days.
Right.
So Christina said, loved it. The scenes from Old Eps added was a nice touch. Nice to see the writers acknowledging the fans this season. Calla Glatz says, it was fantastic, funny, bizarre, beautifully and painfully human. Everything we've come to expect and depend on from Darren Morgan. Cine Phallus says, if the entirety of the revival was just the lost art of forehead sweat, I'd be elated. Darren Morgan has done it again. Masterful. Right, I mean, I think that's an interesting comment, because there are some, like, fans and critics who are, like, really kind of anti-revival, or the revival just hasn't done it for them, basically. But quite a few of them make exceptions for the Darren Morgan episodes. And I sort of perceive that there are other fans who that kind of rubs the wrong way, because they, obviously, people who, like us, you know, we take the series incredibly seriously, and then Morgan's got this way of, like, skewering the series, and doesn't always sit well with people, I think. That probably plays into why his episodes are a little bit divisive. I don't know, I think I'm at sort of a place where, I mean, I love the Darren Morgan episodes, but I also love, like, you know, Chris Carter's X-Files and the Morgan and Wong X-Files and everything. I think the brilliant thing is that all those things can like coexist together. You know, what like Morgan's episodes, as much as they make fun of the series, it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the rest of it. You know.
Absolutely. It's always been a sum of those parts. And it's, I'm the biggest Darren Morgan supporter in the world, but I want to see all of them. I want to see them all give me stories, and because that's part of what the X-Files has been and should be. And just about getting too much into the minutia, fans used to be made of sterner stuff.
I mean, I'd be interested to go back to like the day after like Jose Chung or Clyde Bruckman aired, and see were they immediately acclaimed as the classics like we all know they are, or did it take a while? Can you remember, Paige? Or what's your memory of it?
I really can't remember that. We had groups and there were email lists, and the day after you would be talking a lot about it, and there would be, like, I love this, I didn't love it. There just seemed to be more love and less need to tear it out. Like, if you didn't like something, you just sort of moved on and said, maybe next week will be something that I can take to. And that's kind of the way it went.
Yeah, and I think that probably is like, it's obviously not just confined to the X-Files, is it? I think it's like fan culture as a whole seems to have moved in that direction, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. That's the world we live in now, and Darren Morgan sees it better than most.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. And we've just got a few more. So Sophia Inez says, hilarious episode. That scene when Mulder was shocked because Scully said he was mixing up the Twilight Zone with the Outer Limits. Do you even know me? Lol. Yeah, I think that's my favourite moment of the episode. It's definitely right up there anyway. That, as I was saying to Tony said it sort of struck a personal nerve with him, and truthfully, I feel the same way. But
I know. Have we all not said that to somebody? Wonders why we're so into the X-Files.
Well, yeah, several times this week alone. Yeah. And Elmo says, huge miss. And finally, Priyangana Lahar says, I loved it, including all its drawbacks, idiosyncrasies, cynicism, ruffle dialogues, that's obviously roll on the floor laughing for anyone who's old like me, and photography, nostalgic montage, and MSR. Yeah, the MSR thing's interesting because obviously they still appear to be living separately, but they were arranging to go on some kind of dinner date, weren't they? So let's see where it goes in the next few episodes, I guess.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all the feedback that we've had, or at least that's all the feedback we had before the time we started recording anyway. So, I don't know, Paige, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to say or to point out about this episode, or like a final reflection on it?
Just that I hope, the people who didn't take to it, I hope you will give it a chance and let it sit and go back to it in a couple weeks or even in a few months and give it another chance, because I think the way Darren Morgan episodes work is they sort of change the more you watch them, and I think you'll get more from it. You may not love it as much as other people do, but I think you'll see there is goodness in there to be had.
I think it goes back to something you said a few minutes ago, and I kind of agree that when an episode is the entire focus of the week, it can be very easy to just be very intense in the way you engage with it, Whereas I think that last week's episode plus one, people had certain issues with it or so on, but when we've got the whole series of 10, the season of 10 episodes, it'll kind of settle into its rightful place, and I guess we'll kind of see it more clearly for what it is rather than for what it isn't, I suppose. So I guess, I think that's a nice way of putting it. All right, Paige, thanks very much for joining me today. And before we go, where can people find you on the internet? And tell us how the blog's going with your sister.
Oh, the blog's going very well. It's the Sibling Cinema Rewatch blog on Blogger. We are in the 4th season. We're up to Unruhe. And I could be found on Twitter at Max_Tunage, or also known as X-PAI, XPay. And always on the Facebook XCast basement group.
Good stuff. And this, I believe, concludes our coverage of The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat, but we'll just be having a couple of days off because we'll soon be back for James Wong's Ghoulie, which is episode 5 of the season. In the meantime, as some of you will already know, we've launched our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/the Xcast, you can have a look at that. And if you choose to, you can support the podcast. And there are different tiers if you do want to join. And you can have a look at exactly what each tier kind of entails. And you get different benefits depending on like how much you choose to contribute. So if you're interested in that, please go to patreon.com/the Xcast. And several people have done so already, so I'm here to say thank you to Isabelle Dubois and Alexander Gates, who are both patrons of the Xcast. Thank you very much. Yeah, in the meantime, though, you can find us in the usual places at the X_cast on Twitter, on Facebook, and as Paige says, our group is the X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group. That's all from us for today, but until next time, trust no one.